I think, you know, there's a lot of vagueness around this 800 million. The only thing certain, as you say, is 800 billion. The only thing certain is the 150 billion, and that's loans to member states. I just, you know, I can't help thinking that 800 billion of a shift in funding. I know you mentioned in a vague way that, you know, well, the private sector may see opportunities for investment or may not. But I think that it represents a huge shift in public spending from other areas, because, you know, the national cake in any country is only so big, and I think you'd have to accept that. I think in relation to the overall 800 billion, I think it's as clear as mud where it's coming from. I think that point, I just want to make that point. I read the briefing documents, and I'm kind of interested in some of what's in them. You know, to talk about mobilising the 800 billion for defence, deepening the single defence market, enhancing the industrial capacity, strengthening the industrial base. Like, it really is. There's a lot of, you know, heavy duty mobilisation planned here, providing support, training and support for the Ukrainian armed forces to improve their military capabilities. It's the word used in the documents. Military capabilities. Now, again, like the previous speaker, I'm not going to say whether it's right or wrong. That's not the debate here. But I cannot, in my head, square how assisting somebody directly to improve their military capabilities squares with our position of neutrality. And I don't know whether there's been any discussion around that at official level. I mean, I've heard the political answer in the chamber, but I just can't figure out how that works. And I have huge concerns around, you know, the priorities within, if you're taking it within SAFE itself, that the, you know, establishing a common strategic vision and concrete objectives to strengthen EU security and defence policy by 2030. It goes on to broaden our commitments to European solidarity and security, particularly in light of the ongoing war in Ukraine. And again, in the document it says, under SAFE, it says provide training for the Ukrainian armed forces to improve their military capabilities and support their defence. Now, I mean, like, we're not giving them pillows to sleep on or anything like that at night. You know, military capability is military capability. And I don't see how, you know, I mean, I've heard the Taoiseach answering these questions around this in the Dáil, and he talks about, he has talked about, if I recall correctly, mine, you know, scanning for mines and that and the like of that. Okay, but improving military capacity is a completely different matter. Which I'd just like to comment on that particular term, improving military capabilities and support. That, to me, that cannot mean anything, only one thing. Is that not the case?
Thank you, Deputy. I think we all would agree with the assessment that it would be preferable if the geopolitical situation didn't require member states to invest in military capabilities to deter a Russian attack, particularly those member states to the east. Member states, particularly those in the east, have made sovereign decisions that they need to increase their defence readiness to enhance deterrence and to preserve long-term peace in Europe.
Sorry, Mr. O'Mara, now you're taking me off in a different direction. What I'm asking you is what I've read to you there. You know, how does that, you know, can you see a contradiction in that, in terms of squaring that with our policy of military neutrality?
I might pass to Mr. Fitzgerald. Brendan, sorry.
Thank you. Having sat in the room for the past 3 years dealing with these regulations and meeting and talking and engaging with member state colleagues from the eastern flank, it is very, very clear that the Russia's war of aggression highlighted severe weaknesses in member states' defence capabilities. I'm sorry, Deputy. I will come around to my answer. I do apologise. Those same defence capabilities are the capability requirements of the defence forces. So these mechanisms to support are being designed to support all member states. And as Brian has pointed out, it is voluntary. There may be projects that we will look at engaging with, and we will see if they meet our own capability development needs. But it's for us to step into. It's certainly not something being handed down to us or dictated down to us by the Commission.
But just, and you mentioned it as well, Mr. Fitzgerald or Mr. O'Mara mentioned deciding everything on an individual case. But I mean, if that, at a high level within Europe, if the direction of travel is very much in that direction, and I mean, will it mean, for example, possible involvement in EU battle groups, and possible deployment of Irish troops, Irish boots on the ground in Ukraine?
Deputy, I'll just add on a little bit to my piece, and perhaps I'll hand over to Brian then, just on the European battle group. Currently, certainly in 2024, it's estimated that European member states, European defence funds or investments in military equipment or defence equipment was about 340 billion. Roughly, approximately 80% of that went outside the European Union. So these industries are already in existence. What main objectives of these regulations that we're talking about here now is to present the opportunities to Europeanise supply chains on behalf of member states. That why would we be sending so much of taxpayers' money outside of Europe, for example, to the United States, Canada, or elsewhere, South Korea, who produce a large number of defence products, when we could have our own domestic capability, our own domestic manufacturing? I think this is one of the core points here. We are talking about your taxpayers' money, and perhaps now this is the correct vehicle or a good vehicle to try and keep those opportunities here. And one of the angles, I think Senator Smith was talking about it, was when we were sitting at the table during negotiations, we were talking about, well, what is Ireland's policy? What are we looking for when we're reading these regulations? One of those key policies is actually economic. Is there something here that is inclusive of all member states, even the smaller ones who don't have a big prime industry? Is there a small SME in Limerick or Shannon or Cork that could have availed of European funding, develop high-end jobs here?
No, sorry.
Yes.
No. Sorry. The question I'm asking is that if this leads to, could this lead to a deployment of Irish boots on the ground in Ukraine and possible engagement with Russian forces?
Yeah, so I think I've dealt with the capabilities, but I'll hand over to Brian for the...
I'm asking the question.
My position is...
I've heard a number of answers, but I haven't got the question answered.
Yeah, sorry, I cover the industry piece, so I'll pass over to Brian.
No, I understand what the fund is for, that part of it, for investment, if companies, too low.
So, Deputy, in terms of, you raised two questions, one on the battle group participation and one on the Ukraine. In terms of the battle group, the EU and our EU partners accept that defence and security is national competence. The Irish protocols to the Lisbon Treaty specifically state that the Lisbon Treaty does not provide for the creation of a European army. The battle group is not seen as that. Participation in it has no effect on our traditional policy of military neutrality. Our participation in the current iteration of the battle group takes place on a training basis. Were it ever to be deployed, Ireland's participation would be considered on the basis of our current legislative provisions with regard to overseas deployments. In the event of Irish potential Defence Forces participation in any peacekeeping mission in Ukraine, is a whole other matter, and a number of issues. I know the Taoiseach and Taoiseach have said that potentially we would be open to participation in that, but the circumstances aren't there at present. There would need to be a ceasefire, there would need to be UN Security Council mandate for Defence Forces participation currently, and those circumstances are not there.